the Zen master asks the disciple in their usual seemingly fierce way, "Do you understand Zen?" And the disciple says, "No, master, I don't." And the master says, "Neither do I." It's not, you can't get Zen through conceptual understanding, and you cannot find the meaning of life through conceptual understanding if you are able to relinquish your desire to understand conceptually and access that in you which is beyond concepts. Then you find the meaning of life, but you may not be able to say what it is.
Yeah. The question comes from what you said so beautifully, Eckhardt, that you evaluate, you use your five senses to determine your reality. And the greatest gift you've been given is the gift of your imagination. And in your imagination, there are absolutely no senses necessary. It's why with leukemia, I don't pay attention to what it says on any form or what any numbers show or anything like that. I know that in my imagination, I can place the words, "I am well, I am perfect health," and I can determine the validity of that and the veracity of that for myself on the basis of how I feel, just on the basis of how I feel. Because if you look at life the way the question comes at us, what is this meaning of life? Life meaning what happens from the moment of our conception to the moment of our death, but life itself in that venue is nothing more than a sexually transmitted terminal disease. That's what life is. That's how we get here. That's how we end. But I love the poets, and Emily Dickinson was one of my very favorites. And she would, in her lectures, she would take a handful of dust, and she would say, "This quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies and lads and girls, was laughter and ability and sighing and frocks and curls. This passive place, a summer's nimble mansion where bloom and bees fulfilled their oriental circuit, then ceased like these." That's not life, that's just dust. Life is that which keeps occupying, that which continues to turn into dust. And once you get it, and once you know it, and once you make conscious contact with it, you know, Melville said, God's one and only voice is silence. That's why meditation is such an important part of what both of us teach. I've written a whole book about it. So much of your book, and The Power of Now, is about quiet. It's about meditation. It's about, understanding that it's the silence between the notes that makes the music. It's the space between the bars that holds the tiger. It's like, it's out of, every word that you're hearing me speak right now comes out of the silence. It comes out of the void. Like, here it is, silent. And now it comes out of the void. I remember interviewing the Red Hot Chili Peppers one time for something on VH1, and one of the drummer, Francione, I think, John Francione, something like that. His father was a judge down there, and he was a drug addict at one time. He was off of it at that time. And he said, when you're writing music, he said, the most important thing to remember is that all of it comes out of the silence, and the silence is more important than the note. Because if it's just all note, there's no music. Like, there's no music in that. You have to have pauses. And it's getting into the gap. You mentioned the gap between your thoughts.
Yes.
That's where life is.
And apparently even if Deepak were here, he could talk about this. I can't. But apparently even the atoms, they flash in and out of existence.
Exactly.
So there's always the nothingness and then form, formlessness, form. The That's really, so the balanced life is to embody the two. Form, the temporary form, to recognize it as temporary, but still even love it as a temporary expression of the timeless one. So we don't need to despise it as some traditions do. You despise the body. Christianity did that. Sometimes even Buddhism occasionally in some traditions do it. But to appreciate the beautiful forms, but you can only really appreciate it when you can sense that which is beyond form, and then you recognize it in the other. There's a beautiful Christian way of saying that is to love they say to love the Creator in the creature. So the Creator really is the one formless being. So what you love in the other is ultimately, in true love, is ultimately always the formless.
Right. The spirit.
Yes.
And even, I mean, the words of Jesus again is, he said the flesh counts for nothing. He was talking about his own flesh as well. The flesh counts for nothing. It's the spirit that gives life. And when he said it is only through me that you will come to know the Father, he wasn't speaking about the flesh. He said it counts for nothing. He was speaking about the I am that is in him and all of us. And that is the me he speaks about.
Yeah.
That's the answer. I mean, we want a nice short answer, so we take an exam. What's the meaning of life? And here's the answer. If I had to give the short answer, it's just to treasure your magnificence and live as a God-realized being.
We have just 2 more questions.
Okay.
This question is directed to Wayne, but I think it would be wonderful for you both to comment on it, which is, Wayne, you talk about slaying the ego and destroying it. Is that possible, or is it even necessary? Can the ego be good, too?
I've just gone back and forth on this so much in my life. And the problem with me is that I have everything I feel I've written about. So it's all out there. Someone will say, you said this. And so there was a long period of time when I said the ego's not worth defending, because to me it's an acronym for edging God out. So we just push God out of our lives and believe. I always say that when the baby is born, after 9 months of nothing for anybody to do, it's all taken care of by God or the Tao or Spirit or Divine Mind. And then if nobody does anything, and this perfect being comes out, and we look at it and say, great work, God, we'll take over from here. And in the process of taking over, we teach, like all of us were taught, we teach people to be ordinary. Who was ever raised to believe that they were God? Someone once said that the reason Jesus turned out so well was because his mother really was convinced that he was the Son of God. When you're a virgin out there having a baby, you're really convinced. It's this ego business is. I don't think it's worth defending, but I don't know how to get out of it. The only time I'm ever out of it is when I'm in deep meditation, and it's only for seconds. I'll feel that it's gone. And is it good? Everything is good.
I think you're out of it already.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not. I just feel more love and peaceful. I don't even feel more love. I just feel like I am love. I really feel that that's what I am. And
that's not the ego talking, is it?
No, it's not. No. But every once in a while, I want to go after those people above me on that list. I just. Where did that come from?
Well, that's a good illustration of how quickly it can creep back.
It can. Very good.
And when it does, you have to be compassionate with yourself. There it is again. when you recognize it, it's not really 100% the ego. When you know that some kind of behavior is egoically motivated and you recognize it, yes, it is still egoically motivated behavior, but there is an awareness also there in the background. And that's the transitional stage from moving from being totally dominated by ego to becoming free of ego, is to begin to recognize the ego in yourself. Strictly speaking, the real ego operates in people who have no idea about ego. They are it. So the people who most need to learn about the ego are not here.
But they're right where they belong. They're right where they belong.
So it's the real ego is, you have no idea that you are totally identified with every reaction, with every thought, with every emotion. You just become it. That's the ego. But when you know there's something in you, when you know there's anger arising, when you know that suddenly there's a stream of negative thinking, says, that is, it's an egoic trait, but it's not really the ego anymore, because you are there as the witnessing presence.
The observer.
Yeah.
Become the observer.
And then our final question. Should I establish goals for my life? And if so, what kind of goals would each of you place a high value on?
I'm not much into goals. I'm sitting next to the guy who wrote The Power of Now. Now and goals seem to be sort of a bit at conflict. Again, I wrote some textbooks back in the early 70s talking about the importance of goals. And I can't have them all withdrawn, but I think that I watch my kids, and some of them are in college now, and some of them are out, and they're worrying about what they're going to major in, and trying to set a goal. And I tell them just try to just enjoy every single moment, and just let yourself be guided. I think it's great advice for parenting. It's just guide, then just step aside and recognize that all of us have the anchor of the universe located within us. That's what Lao Tzu said. It's in every single one of us. And let yourself be swept with it. Let yourself be taken by it, rather than getting your individual ego in there saying, this is what I'm going to do. And, it's like Arthur Miller, the great playwright, he was asked a question at an interview with the New York Times. He was 91 years old, and they said to him, are you working on another play? And he said, I don't know. He said, but I probably am. And I understood exactly what he meant. I mean, I just finished writing a book that I put a year of my life into, This Wish is Fulfilled. And last night, I called the president of Hay House, my best friend, Reed Tracy, and I said, there's an idea germinating inside of me that I think will ultimately become a book. I don't know even quite, I just know it's starting to excite me. And I've often been called the father of motivation all over the world. They've got this title they put next to me, and I always say, if I have to be the father of anything other than the 8 children that I have, I would choose to be the father of inspiration, because I think it's the reverse of motivation. Motivation is when you get a hold of an idea and you take it where you believe that you can take it with your goals, and any obstacles that come along, you're going to plow through them, you're going to make this thing happen. And that's motivation. You get a hold of an idea. Inspiration is an idea gets a hold of you, and it takes you where you were intended to go even before you were ever conceived. I can't imagine you as a little boy in Germany were thinking about you know, being one of the most famous authors in the world. I mean, and how it all comes about, and what's going to come next for you. And like you said, even I don't even know what words are going to come out next. It's for me, it's just being completely immersed in the now and surrendering, just like turning it over. That's just what I do. I turn it over. And the most amazing things happen when you turn it over. That's when God comes into your life. That's what Carl Jung called synchronicity. You have almost like a collaboration with fate. You're letting it all unfold. When in the midst of your writing, I don't know if it happens for you, but you know, there'll be something I'm not sure or whatever, and all of a sudden I'll go to the mail or somebody will pick up the phone and it'll be right there. And it's like, after a while, you start to almost count on it. You start to realize that you don't have to do anything. You can just let it come to you.
Yes.
So I don't think you can be totally free of goals. Like, you know, I have to go to the bathroom. So I'm going to have a goal to go to the toilet, you know. I mean, so I don't think I can get totally out of that goal place, but by and large in my life, I just let it be. I think the Beatles had it right. When you find yourself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. There will come an answer, let it be. I don't know, that's my theme.
What a beautiful song that is. Simple and profound. Like you, I don't have any goals except very short-lived, like having to go tomorrow. I have to. My goal is to tomorrow to come here, to do this, to do that. I think there is a time in people's lives when there is a place for goals, but the important thing is the nature of the goal, and if it arises out of inspiration, as you call it, or vision that comes to you of something that wants to be created through you. It could be a book. When The Power of Now came to me, I felt this urge suddenly of writing. I bought a yellow notepad and began writing the first line, and at that moment I knew it's a book, and I knew what it was about, and it was very different from the kind of casual writing I had done before over the years, sometimes after sitting with people in having a session called counseling sessions, doing meditation with small groups. I would sometimes say things, and then later I would write them down because this was new to me too, but I said things that I didn't know before they came out. So that was a more casual writing, and then suddenly an energy stream came of a very different, more empowered kind of writing. And from the very first moment I knew it's a book. So in that sense, one could say I suddenly had the vision of writing a book, one could say. As one could say, I had a goal of producing a book. But it wasn't something that came as with a promise of delivering some kind of personal fulfillment to me in any way, that I can become famous through that, or I can make money through that, or I can become powerful through that, people are going to listen to me. Well, these could have been motivations for writing a book, but it was more like something, a realization of something that wants to come into being, and then you help it along, you go with it, you become a channel through which that wants to come into being comes into being. It may use your mind, it may use your thoughts. So it's, in that sense, one could have a goal, and the important thing is not to be vigilant so that the ego doesn't take over your goal, because the ego, even though you may have a deep vision, you may not be totally free of ego yet. So at some point the ego can take over, And a good sign that the ego is taken over is you become stressed while you're doing it. Or you become, as the Bhagavad Gita beautifully teaches, you become attached to the fruit of your action. You're attached to the outcome. You need the outcome to be in a certain way. And that's the unconscious state, and that's where goal making really makes you unconscious. So the expression used in the Bhagavad Gita is it's a spiritual practice to take action, including perhaps having goals, but never be attached to the outcomes. In other words, you enjoy the doing in the now. The now remains more important than where you want to get to. If that shifts, if where you want to get to is more important than the now, that's the delusion that arises, and you lose yourself in your doing. That's the dreadful thing. So, in the enjoyment of the doing, and with the enjoyment comes the power also that flows into it. So that the doing isn't a means to an end. Yes, you have a goal, but your attention is in the now and the enjoyment of the energy that flows into the doing. And then it becomes empowered. And then the goal looks after itself. Jesus said the same thing. Don't be concerned about tomorrow. Tomorrow will look after itself. And the goal will look after itself. And again, it comes back to being rooted in that deep place of beingness or awareness, so that you don't need the outcome to give you some ultimate sense of fulfillment of who you are, tell you who you are. I want to become a famous author. That's why I'm writing this book. That's a recipe for dissatisfaction. And I remember saying to people when I was writing the book, and by the way, people said to me, you're writing about the now, think of something else. It's been done so many times. It's old stuff, the now. Ram Dass wrote about it a long time ago, and several people said, think of something else, but I couldn't. And so it came the now, wanted to be written about. So and I remember saying to people, I don't really mind how many people buy the book, and if nobody wants it, I'm fine with it. I don't know why I said what I said. I said if nobody wants it, then I will make a living selling tomatoes. And I really meant it. I wanted to I would sell tomatoes and be just simple living, but the book wanted to be written. But I'm not going to look to the book for some kind of ultimate fulfillment on a personal level.
I think that's important as we close. That when you get to that place, Patanjali said, when you're inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, said, all of your thoughts break their bonds. Said, your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new and a great and a wonderful world. And then he said, dormant forces, which is what you were speaking about, things that you thought were dead, dormant forces, faculties and talents come alive. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. You discover yourself to be God. And these dormant forces just follow after you and take care of it for you. I think the best definition I ever heard of success, I've used it for my whole life. I did a whole PBS show out there in Concord, Massachusetts. I laid down in this man's bed to just get his energy, sat at his desk, felt great identification with Henry David Thoreau, who was put into jail for not paying his taxes to a government that was doing what they were doing to the Native Americans, a man of real conscience. A great definition, a good way to end this, I think. He said, if you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. It will chase you. That's how it works for me. And it seems that's how it works for you too. Thank you.